I'm just trying to figure that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. It's also late. So, I mean, Joe Papel is right. Over in the comment section, we're going nice and early here with the disdain. Joe Papel, welcome to the Russ Joy Show, but you knew that because it's past 8:30 and there's no show. I honestly thought I said it at 8:45. I came downstairs. I was like, all right, good. Down here, set up, ready to go. Beautiful. I had the audacity to make hot lunch for my kids for school today, which throws off the timing in the morning. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Welcome in. Now, why are we doing a show today? Because it's Wednesday. We do the show every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 8:30. Why do I still use we when it's just me? It's just me, myself, and I. Well, because I have all of you out there on YouTube, Facebook, and X. Remember, if you're on X, you have to click the video first and then comment in the old Periscope mode in order for me to be able to pull it up on the screen. There was somebody who was tweeting into the void the other day from X. They were just replying to a tweet, and I couldn't pull it up here. I had no idea until after the show was over. Anyway, where do we start today? If you ever take a look at the description of the episode, you'll see that there are a few things that we're going to touch on today, mostly on your team, your town, your Philadelphia Phillies, who blew a nice lead, who had Zack Wheeler on the mound. We have to be fair. Wheeler did not have his best game last night. Are we going to crucify Zack Wheeler on a Wednesday morning, given how damn good Zack Wheeler typically is? The answer to that, of course, is no. But Russ, it's hypocritical, because what about the way that you talk about Aaron Nola? Sit down and shut up. Yeah, but Aaron Nola, he can only give up 3 runs over the weekend. You were pissed at him. Because it was still the home run issue. Zack Wheeler has bought himself all kinds of patience from me and from most Phillies fans. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Just about like where Zack Wheeler stacks up all time, and especially if you think over the last few decades, where Zack Wheeler has kind of built himself up into. I think that he's put himself in position where he's looked at a lot in a way that Roy Halladay used to be, Cliff Lee used to be looked at. And so to that end, I say to anyone who has an issue with me giving a little bit of grace to Zack Wheeler after a rougher than usual start last night, me giving him a little bit of leeway. Again, please sit down, close the mouth, open the ears, listen, open your hearts, open your minds. But anyway, Phillies lose last night. We'll talk about that. There are some glaring issues that I saw coming out of that game that, listen, the Phillies are still 7-3. This is a very good team. This is a team that won 2 out of 3 against the Dodgers. This is a team that has won every series it's played in so far this year. But there are concerns. I remain having some concerns. We'll get into those on the show. I'll take any of your thoughts, your questions, your comments, and concerns over on YouTube, Facebook, and X. But the Phillies are probably the biggest story. And then I also noted that there is a big thing that happened in the NBA. And the reason that we're going to talk about it isn't because I have some kind of love or appreciation for the Denver Nuggets, but rather they did something really ballsy. They did something really gutsy, and they did something that I would love to see the Philadelphia 76ers do. And that, of course, is make a change. I'd like to see them make the change in the front office, maybe more so than the head coach. But in fairness, if you do change the front office, I'm fine with them evaluating everything and making a change at head coach. But the Denver Nuggets fired their coach and GM 5 days before the regular season ends. We're going to talk about that and what it can mean for the Sixers. And oh, by the way, the Sixers have now locked in the 5th spot, the 5th best odds of winning the NBA draft lottery. How do we feel about that? We'll get there as well. Am I a little bit disappointed that they can't fall any further? That it seems as though there's no chance of them catching anyone else. Yeah, there's a little bit of disappointment, but it's okay. We'll overcome this together, friends. So we'll get back to that in a little bit. Let's go out to the comments, though, before we dive into the Phillies game from last night, before we dive into this Nuggets and Sixers thing, and before we dive into anything else that any of you find particularly interesting. Are we going to talk about the White Lotus finale? Not today. Maybe Friday. I thought about it. I have thoughts on the White Lotus finale, and I feel like you should give at least a little bit of grace here. I hate when a show gets spoiled, and the finale was on Sunday. Do I think that by Wednesday morning you should have seen it if you're a huge fan of it? Maybe. Will I extend a bit of grace, just a wee bit, for a few more days? Yeah, I guess so. Let's go out to the comments. Chris Freed says, it's time for the Phillies to extend the Johan Rojas experiment. Or sorry, end, not extend. End the Johan Rojas experiment. It's funny. I got a DM on Instagram. Hold on. Let me see if I can find it. I got a DM on Instagram a few days ago. It was somebody who found this show through short form content because Video Guy Amadeo does a great job. And this guy said that he's been seeing a lot of the stuff in his feed, and he asked the question, how long are we going to pretend that Brandon Marsh is a better option than Rojas? And I said, well, I don't really know, but I fully expect them to keep hoping that Marsh is going to turn into something that he probably isn't. And at some point, they might be forced to take a longer look at Rojas. But I don't think either of them are going to be here in a few years. I'm not even convinced that both of those guys are going to be on the Major League roster by the end of the season. I think that ultimately, Marsh is a guy that they still really like. Marsh is a guy that they still would go to bat for. Rojas is kind of a weird... I find the entire idea of Johan Rojas, like we're multiple years into this guy and hoping that he's going to blossom into a player that I'm not exactly sure is there. So I get the frustration from Chris Fried. Connor Allen says, bullpen is cheeks and Rojas isn't a major league player. The end. Well, the Rojas not being a major league player could ultimately prove to be correct. The bullpen being cheeks is also very accurate. Though I have to be fair, right? Because I said on Monday, I shan't trash the front office entirely for their decisions on the bullpen. I won't do that because bullpens they're a fickle beast, right? You can have a bullpen that looks incredible going into a season that implodes. You can have a guy like Jay Romano that this team thought was going to be a high leverage guy who, 4 series into the season is now going to be a low leverage guy until he can hopefully regain some kind of his old form. That's a legitimate issue. That's a legitimate concern, but it is something that we've already seen kind of play out in front of us. And on the flip side, sometimes you have a guy that you think is going to be a lower leverage guy that ultimately blossoms into being somebody that could be your closer, your setup guy. Do I think that they probably should have considered adding a better bullpen arm in the offseason? Yeah. Do I think that it's ultimately going to be the downfall of the team? No. But as I said the other day, if you get to a point where this doesn't turn around and you get to like early-ish May, and this bullpen is still, as Connor Allen so beautifully stated, cheeks, then you have to make a trade. You can't allow your bullpen to come in and give up even more runs. So, all right, we'll get to it in a little bit about my thoughts on why the bullpen had me so aggravated last night. We'll get there. Ford likes the definition, the labeling of the bullpen as cheeks. And he says, nothing has changed for me. They won't win anything meaningful. Aging roster won't hit come playoff time. Yada yada. Nice team won't win the Dub series. I don't remember Ford being this negative after winning 2 out of 3 against the Dodgers, but I do remember the general negativity around the team and their ability to, or lack thereof, of winning the World Series. Adam Glickus over here says, I smashed the like button. Thank you, Adam. Hopefully more people will also smash that like button. It is kind of big. It's especially big to the fine folks over on YouTube. They really like to see people smashing the like button. Really quick note on YouTube, by the way. Not only do you have to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel and ring the bell, if you're used to getting your notifications on your phone of when the stream goes live, you have to allow the YouTube app to send you notifications. If you don't, you won't get notified. I know that might seem kind of like elementary, but it is a thing. Okay. I see some comments over here about the lottery, both the Flyers and the Sixers. We'll get there in a little bit. Ford says, going to an event at the Sun's school soon. Enjoy it, Ford. Enjoy the time with your kiddo. Tyler DeMuro says, back catching the show live, unlike Rojas catching that pop fly. Yeah, that was a disaster. And that ultimately led to the Braves tying the game. And that was a play that simply cannot happen at the major league level. We'll come back to him in a second. JH says, oh, Russ. Oh, my goodness. That game was something. Yeah, it was a flaming pile of dog shit. That's what that game was last night. And it was frustrating. King Alfred's U.S. Descendant says, if I told you yesterday Alec Boehm would go 1 for 5 with multiple bad at-bats, would you believe me? Oh, I sure would. Let me just find a little bit of positive. Can I take one positive? Because he notes Alec Bohm, right? And we all know how we feel about Alec Bohm at this point. I was pretty clear about this on Monday, that Alec Bohm to me is the most frustrating human being on this team. He is a guy who has a world of talent, has a ton of tools that you would want in a third baseman. I think is a valuable player. And if he could fix the shit between his ears, he probably would be a very good player for this team. And in fairness, Alec Bohm isn't exactly being asked to do anything absurd. It's not as if there isn't protection in this lineup. It's not as if Alec Bohm is the focal point of a lineup full of scrubs, and now pitchers just kind of get to pitch around him. That's not what's happening. Alec Bohm is in a lineup where he's lucky to have guys like, and, roll your eyes at some of the names depending on how they're playing at any given time, but like Trey Turner's still a good hitter somewhere in there. Trey Turner. You have Kyle Schwarber. You have Bryce Harper, JT Realmuto, Nick Castellanos. Even on their worst days, those are guys that can hit the gap. Those are guys that can deposit the ball into the seats. Those are guys that ultimately can get on base and still keep a pitcher on their heels, right? Alec Bohm should be better than what he is. Alec Bohm should be producing at a much higher rate than he is. And the biggest problem is really the at-bats just being bad. So much of the Alec Bohm frustration is that it doesn't look like this guy is able to identify things in a way that puts pressure back on the pitcher. And you see a lot of short at-bats. You see a lot of at-bats where he's swinging at shit that makes no sense to swing at. And then you get frustrated. And then you watch last night. He pops out, flies out to end the game. And he slams the bat down because he's frustrated. And he should be. But I don't know what people expect at this point. I mean, remember, the Phillies wanted to trade him, or they at least were more than willing to have conversations around Alec Bohm in the offseason. None of this is a surprise. None of what's happened with Alec Bohm has been a shock. The only time in his career that he has looked every bit of what we hoped he would develop into is the first half of last season, which is why he was at the All-Star game, which is why he was at the All-Star weekend festivities. He played really well in the first half of last season. Second half of last season didn't go as nearly as well. And then you have the start of this year that's been very underwhelming. And so that's kind of left people saying, Edmundo Sosa has played very well, has hit the ball very well. Why aren't we seeing more Edmundo Sosa at third? Well, because there's a law of diminishing returns potentially, right? If Bohm gets benched and Bohm is out of the lineup consistently, there's nowhere else you're going to play him except maybe first base to spell Harper, though you would think that maybe that's a place that Realmuto could play if he needs a day off from behind the plate. So that's not ideal. And Bohm seems like a guy that gets in his emotions enough that if you were to bench him for an extended period of time, it's not going to light a fire under his ass. He very well might just kind of mentally collapse. And if that's the case, you've now really done damage to your lineup, because even though Bohm is frustrating and even though Bohm doesn't look particularly good right now, we have seen him be able to put together good stretches in the past, good enough stretches that allow him to look like he somewhat belongs in this lineup. Now, Sosa's an interesting guy, though, because we have to call it what it was. Sosa made the catch of the year yesterday. Stole a surefire home run. Went over the left field fence down at the Atlanta Braves ballpark. Reached over the fence and made one hell of a grab. And the beauty of the Sosa catch is that when he made that catch and the arm goes over the fence, you're like, all right, did he get it? Because initially it looked like he grabbed it. But because you lose sight of the glove, you go, oh man, did it hit the glove? Did he drop it? And then he comes up and Edmundo Sosa does a little shimmy that he kind of does a flex, but he kind of does a shimmy. It's like an Eddie Guerrero shimmy, like he's about to climb up onto the left field fence and drop a frog splash on somebody, right? He kind of hits you with one of these. Great moment. Edmundo Sosa is a lot of fun to watch. Edmundo Sosa is a guy that needs to be in the lineup practically every day. Now, could there be a law of diminishing returns on Edmundo Sosa? Is it possible that you could make a case that if Sosa plays too much, He's not going to perform at the same rate that he is right now. Maybe. Is Edmundo Sosa going to be able to hit 478 the entire season? Of course not. Is Edmundo Sosa going to be a guy that's going to, over the course of a season, if he gets regular playing time, is he going to hit like 350? Is he going to hit 315, 320? Probably not if you play him like 100 plus games. And let me just do a little dive over here. In his career, he's only played 100 plus games twice. 2021 with the St. Louis Cardinals. And then he played 104 games for the Phillies 2 years ago. Played 90 last year. Do I think that Sosa deserves a much longer look? Do I think that he deserves to be in the lineup, especially while he's hot? Hell yeah. He should. Without question. Will it, over the course of an entire season, will this insane stretch continue? Probably not. Can you extrapolate that data and then say, oh, it's going to get better? Probably not. JH says, Russ is talking about Bohm like he hasn't already mentally collapsed. Chris Freed says, did Rojas allow the ball to drop to show up Sosa after his gem catch? Now, I just saw something. Hold on a second. This can't be right. There's no chance that this is right. Because if this is horrific. Holy shit. The Philadelphia Union just did a really stupid thing. Why in the hell did this? Okay. Well, I don't know. I don't know why this has happened. I'm going to show it to you, though. This feels like the stupidest thing that the Philadelphia Union could have done. It now hijacks our Phillies conversation because this is almost unconscionable that this has happened. But Tom Bogart, who breaks a lot of news in MLS and has a great mustache, the Philadelphia Union have agreed to a deal to send Daniel Gazdag to the Columbus Crew. I have no idea what to make of that. I have no idea how you take what has been one of your most consistent, one of your best players, easily one of the biggest stars on your team, and you've now traded him to Columbus? What the hell what is the Union doing? I don't know. Is it are? What the hell is Philadelphia? What? Okay, let me see. Can I come up with a comparison that would even make sense? No, I can't. Not on the fly. This doesn't make any sense. I think you all know me long enough to know that I'm very rarely speechless, but in this case, I am speechless. It looks like my camera froze too, so I'll come over to this one, but I am speechless. That should not have happened. I'm trying to unless the Union have another move up their sleeve, I have no idea what this is. I have no idea what they're doing. I just got a text from a buddy of mine. I said, Gazdag Delta Columbus, and he just said, shut the fuck up. I'm at a loss. I know this doesn't make for good show. This doesn't make for good YouTube, whatever. It's a cash trade. Holy shit, it's a cash trade. That's it. The Union got money. He has been one of the best attacking midfielders in the entire league, in all of Major League Soccer. Daniel Gazdag has been one of the best attacking mids in all of MLS. He has been easily one of the most important players to a Union team that has each and every year, last year pretty much notwithstanding, has made it deep into the playoffs. I have no idea what they're doing. He's had at least 14 goals in each of the last 3 seasons. He had 22 goals in 2022. I can't figure this out for the life of me. And he's not a guy who has injury issues, injury concerns. I don't get it. I don't understand. This doesn't make sense. Jim Cochran tried to make the case that most of his goals came off the PK. He was awful last year. I think a lot of guys had a down year last year in Jim Curtin's last year as manager. The idea that he doesn't fit the system, this is the same argument they made about McGlynn. When you have a talented guy, you figure out a way to make that guy work in your system. Or you figure out a way to mold your system to still get the best or close to the best out of that player. I don't understand this at all. It genuinely feels like a very, very questionable at best decision. That is legitimately shocking. And by the way, Gazdag is the all-time leading goal scorer for your team, your town, your Philadelphia Union. So it's not like this guy was a flash in the pan. He has the most goals in franchise history, in club history. And now you've dealt him. I don't know what the hell the Union are thinking. It better be a lot of money, and there better be a second move lined up. This better be the first of the shoes to fall, and the other one better be pretty damn impactful. Okay. We're going to go back to the Phillies here until I can figure out what the hell is going on. Chris Reed asks, is the Union in a financial crisis? The Union have never been in a great financial state because their owner is not one of the wealthiest owners in the league. And this is a top 4 sports market. This is a market that should have a high-spending team. This is a team that routinely is able, because Ernst Tanner is probably one of the most incredible front office executives in this league. He's able to go find guys in like the 4th league of Norway and turn them into like all-stars. I'm at a total loss. I don't know what to make of any of it. Jim asks, maybe they want to play Kevin Sullivan more. Maybe. You have a sure thing in Gazdag. Like, I don't get it. It makes no sense. And Sean C. says, all the goodwill they built up in the first month with their performance, poof. Yeah, brutal. Joe Papel says, well, Ruben traded Cliff Lee for a bucket of old baseballs to restock the farm. Cliff had just carried them to the World Series while Cole just wanted the season to be over. Yeah, it's not good. And Brian Knowlton says, I stopped following them after the first 2 years. With that said, did they not learn from the Letou trade? If it's a lot of money and it allows them to go out and like get a couple of impact players, then I guess it's fine. But man, on the surface, without knowing what the next move is, that is a pretty freaking awful decision. All right, so I'm going to get back to the Phillies here for a second. So I said earlier that like I'm willing to give Zack Wheeler the benefit of the doubt, right? I'm willing to give Zack Wheeler a lot more leeway than I am with an Aaron Nola. And if anybody thinks it's hypocritical, I think you're crazy. But like, why am I willing to give him more leeway? It's because Zack Wheeler is an ace of a staff, and he's not just like an ace of a good team or an ace of a great team. He is an ace that stacks up against any other ace in Major League Baseball. And so like when I think of Zack Wheeler and I think about like the body of work, there's a legitimate case to be made here that Zack Wheeler has been a better or maybe even a bigger contributor than Roy Halladay and Cliff Lee ever were for this team. And I know it seems crazy because a lot of people look back on the Cliff Lee tenure and they look back on the Roy Halladay tenure and they say, look at the performance that Cliff Lee had even going back to the 2009 World Series. Look at the way that Roy Halladay won a Cy Young through a perfect game, a no-hitter in the playoffs, all that. Those guys had incredible careers. And I would still say that on merit and on aggregate, Roy Halladay probably had a better career than Wheeler has to this point. But Wheeler's really knocking on that door. Wheeler, as a Philly, has probably been a better, more impactful player over a long period of time than both Lee and Halladay. And it seems crazy. And I hold both Lee and Halladay right in here, with a ton of affinity. I think that those guys were incredible. But Wheeler's really, really, really freaking good. And at a time where pitchers Don't go as long into games as Wheeler's capable of doing. In a day and age where you see runs get put up at a pretty insane clip, Wheeler's been everything you need in an ace. He's everything and more. So when he goes out and he gives up 5 runs in Atlanta, I say that sucks, and I don't like seeing the Phillies lose in Atlanta. But at the same time, I can also sit back and go, this is probably not going to be what's going to happen with Zack Wheeler all season. This is probably going to be an anomaly of a game, as long as past precedent stands. Zack Wheeler is that good. Does he occasionally have a game where he gets, a crooked number put up on him? Yeah. Is 5 an implosion? No. Did Wheeler go out and give up 8 runs and give up, 4 home runs? No. He gave up 5 runs. It's not great. I'll extend him some grace. I expect him to be pretty damn dominant the next time out. My bigger issue coming out of the game last night, beyond Wheeler, wasn't even the hitting. You put up 5 runs on the road. You had a lead. You'd kind of expect for that to hold. Schwarber almost hits for the cycle. Schwarber has a hell of a home run, an incredibly hard hit home run that goes, 462 into right center? I mean, an absolute bullet of a home run. Has a triple that no one sees coming, right? The lineup, for the most part, did its job. I think if you put up 5 runs on the road, you should feel pretty damn good, especially with Zack Wheeler on the mound. Should feel pretty damn good about your chances of winning. My bigger issue was when you got to the bullpen, because there were moments that I thought Strahm looked okay, and there were moments that I thought he didn't. I thought Kerkering was kind of all over the place. Wasn't exactly thrilled. He had 2 walks. That's certainly not what you want out of a bullpen arm, especially a guy that it feels like every year we talk about the fact that the Phillies want to see Kerkering take that next step. Like they've kind of been grooming him to be a guy that can be the back end of the bullpen, can be a guy that you can rely on in high leverage situations. They want to develop him into being that guy. 2 walks is not great. And then you look at like Tanner Banks, and Tanner Banks was also bad. I'm trying to be nice. The bullpen left a lot to be desired last night. And in the midst of a game where Wheeler gives up 5 runs, you would expect the bullpen to go out, get the job done, get some innings eaten up, out of the way, get in, get out, get on with life. And they failed. There's no sugarcoating how this bullpen did. They failed the assignment. Now, should the Phillies bats late in that game have been able to put together a couple of better at-bats, maybe even in the 9th inning, you get Harper on base. Should Bohm have, maybe done a little bit better in his at-bat? Probably. I just found the entire end of that game to be more frustrating. Because, again, if the Phillies bats perform the way that they're supposed to, and to the most part they did early in that game, and if Wheeler goes out and does what he's supposed to do, it's probably a 5-2 Phillies win. Wheeler has an off night. Bullpen comes in. They somewhat implode. Not great. Not great. Sean C. says, there will be more Phillies games like last night than people are really prepared for. Strong starting pitcher will have a game where they falter, and the offense will show everyone who they really are. 5 runs. Again, I'm not ready to blame the lineup for last night's game. 5 runs on the road against a division rival. Should be able to get you there. Can we all be pissed off about the fact that they didn't score down the stretch? Yeah. But I don't know. Connor Allen said, I'm blaming any Phillies loss on the guy who said he doesn't like cheesesteaks, hoagies, or tomato pie. That'd be Josh Gaynor. Let his name live in your heart. Often here live in the comments section. We're not going to blame Josh Gaynor for last night's loss. Joe Papel on the Zack Wheeler versus Roy Halladay thing says, longer period. Halladay didn't even get them to the World Series. I still think Roy hurt something pitching that first round no-hitter. I don't know if he did. But I also wouldn't hold the fact that Halladay didn't get them to the World Series against him. We got to be honest here. That Cardinals series where Halladay throws an incredible game, gives up 1 run, Carpenter outduels him with a shutout, and the Phillies bats went totally cold. That should have been a series that they could have won, and they should have won the World Series that year. Okay. I think I'm good right now on the Phillies. That's all a lot of talk about one game. And in fairness, the sky is not falling. Is it a little bit annoying? Was last night's game frustrating? It was. Am I going to lose sleep over it? No. I slept like a baby last night. Now, I do have good news. While the Phillies blew it yesterday, we can all rest assured that tonight's going to be a great duel on the mound. Taijuan Walker takes the mound on Wednesday night with a 0.00 ERA. Taijuan Walker has had one of the best starts in all of Major League Baseball on the mound. Taijuan Walker is going to march into Atlanta. He's going to follow up on a great performance in his first game. And he's going to get the job done, guys. Don't worry about it. Plus, Grant Holmes is on the mound for the Braves. He's got an ERA over 7. No big deal. In all seriousness, tonight's a game that you have to have your bats ready. Taijuan's on the mound. It could be a bloodbath both ways, in fairness. It could be a good night to beat up on Holmes as well. Tomorrow's a very interesting thing because we're going to see if Jesus Luzardo can keep things going. Luzardo's been fantastic through his first 2 starts of the year, picked up wins in both. Listen, you want to win 2 out of 3 in Atlanta. It's a bummer to lose the series opener. There is still a realistic path. If the bats wake up tonight and then Luzardo does what Luzardo has done so far through 2 starts, you could still win 2 out of 3 against the Braves. I'm trying to go positive spin. Big positive spin guy right here on the Russ Joy Show. That's what it's all about. All right, let me see if there's anything else. Chris Reed says, torpedo bats for one and all tonight. Connor Allen says, Taijuan Walker on the mound for an MLB Network game. Gross. JH says, gives up 7 homers in the first inning. Landros says, sky is not falling, but the S&P 500 is. It's going to get better. Or it's not. One of 2 things is going to happen. Either the stock market is going to get better or it's going to get worse. But either way, the Russ Joy Show will be here as long as the national infrastructure remains strong and intact. Okay. All right. Jamie with a good point. Grant Holmes does kind of look like Kenny Powers. Says at least we can be entertained by Kenny Powers pitching for Atlanta. He does kind of look like him. The hair's a little bit longer, not as mulletish, at least in the picture I see. Okay, I'm done with that. Now, I want to get to the last thing today. And as I mentioned at the start of the show, it's not exactly the most Philly thing. It's not exactly the most Philly-related story. Actually, hold on. Before I do that, I'm going to call an audible on myself. We need to go over to Tankathon because I mentioned at the start of the show that the Sixers are in a good spot, Tankathon-wise, but the Flyers are also in a good place, Tankathon-wise, because Boston beat up on New Jersey, which means that on Wednesday, April 9th, your team, your town, your Philadelphia Flyers wake up with the 4th best odds of getting that number 1 overall pick. And that's pretty damn good. Now, the downside is they have 2 games in hand on Boston. You'll lose both of those games and you're fine. The Flyers do find themselves in a spot that you don't exactly want to be, which is you've played fewer games than some of these other teams. Now, Seattle, well enough ahead of them. Pittsburgh at this point, well enough ahead of them. You shouldn't fall into this range unless the Flyers go on a heater, which they damn well better not. The 4th spot is a very strong place to end if you're the Flyers. You have 5 games left, 10 total points available. You ain't getting all 10. You shouldn't get 8 or 6 or even 4. 3 or fewer probably gets you that number 4 spot going into the draft lottery. So we're going to, JH says, haters a week ago saying 4th was out of reach. We have to see what happens. Okay, we're going to spin it one time. And the Flyers fall to 5. Detroit moves up 10 spots to number 2. If the Flyers were to finish at 4 and they fall to 5, guess what, guys? It's not the end of the world. Can I tell you, though, I actually had a nightmare about this last night, that the Flyers ended up picking 8th. It was not an ideal dream. I didn't like that. Let's go over to NBA Tankathon next because we're going to talk about something that's like sort of Sixers adjacent. As of as of April 9th, the Sixers find themselves in 5th place in the draft lottery, and so we're going to Do a little spinny spin over here. And the Sixers fall to number 7, and they lose their pick to Oklahoma City. So not a great day on the Tankathon spins, guys. Not a great day. Sixers and Flyers both fall. Yeah, that'd be bad, very bad. I do want to reset this, though, just to kind of illustrate a point here. A few years ago, the NBA changed the percentages. You know, if you remember, like way back in the day, having the worst record in the league gave you, I think it was like a 25% chance of winning the number 1 overall pick. If you look at this, right, 14% for the worst record, 14% for the second worst record, 14% for the third worst record. And then it falls to 12.5%, and then the Sixers are at a 10.5% chance of winning the number 1 overall pick. That's at least like a somewhat fair and balanced system. I don't know if I love it, but it's at least something. It doesn't de-incentivize tanking, but maybe it makes you think a little bit longer about it. Anyway, the thing that I wanted to bring up that's like sort of adjacent to the Sixers, but like not totally, is what happened out in Denver yesterday. Because I cannot remember there being a time that any of this kind of thing has ever happened. So 5 days left in the regular season, and we get Shams Charania dropping a Shams bomb. A Sham? I don't know what we're calling him yet, but Shams breaks the news yesterday that with 5 days left in the regular season, Denver fired their head coach, Michael Malone. Now, I have no idea what the hell happened behind the scenes with the Nuggets that you would fire your head coach. As of them firing Mike Malone, the Nuggets were in 4th place in the Western Conference. 4th. They weren't like scrapping it out for a spot in the playoffs. They were 4th in the Western Conference. They wake up this morning 5th in the Western Conference with 3 games to play. Now, in fairness, things could go awry really quickly, and I'll show you why. All right, now, this is maybe why they made the move. If we go over to the standings in the NBA Western Conference, this is where things do get kind of chaotic. Let me see if I can give a little further zoom here and make it easier on your eyes. So outside of the Thunder and the Rockets, who are pretty well ahead of the pack, the Thunder are playing at a totally different level. If you look at number 3 through, let's say, number 8, right? Remember, 7 and 8 have to play in the play-in games. The disparity in the win column is 2 games. Now, in theory, maybe the Nuggets felt like because of how their defense has collapsed in the last month and a half, that they needed to make a change. They needed to do something that was going to send a shock to the system and maybe get Nikola Jokic and the boys playing a better overall game and playing better defensively so that they don't free fall into one of these play-in spots. But yeah, this is bad. I mean, I can't think of a year that we've seen this in the Western Conference where it's like, you have 4 teams that are all tied with an identical 47-32 record. The Timberwolves are a mere game behind that pace. The Lakers are a mere game ahead of that pace. This is insane. But to fire your head coach, who, by the way, you won an NBA championship. You hoisted the Larry O'Brien trophy 2 years ago. You lost in the Western semis last year to Minnesota. Not ideal. But to fire the head coach with 3 games left in the regular season, that felt crazy. But it didn't end there. Because while that seemed kind of nuts, they also fired their GM on the same day. They also sent Calvin Booth packing. Now, why do I bring this up? Is it because I genuinely care about the Denver Nuggets? No. But I would like to note that there is a team in the Western Conference that won a championship 2 seasons ago and has his team, or had his team, what was his team, 4th in the Western Conference, now 5th as they wake up this morning, but still very much alive in the top half of the Western Conference, or the top half of the playoff picture of the Western Conference. They fired that coach and they fired that GM. Now, there have been things that came out. I listened to Zach Lowe's emergency show where he said that for the last year or so, there have been significant tensions between Malone and Booth, and that perhaps the reason that these moves were made is because enough people finally felt like the factions within the organization were starting to tear things apart or had done irreparable damage, and the only way to fix it, to clean it up, was to boot both of these guys. But 3 games left in the regular season. You mean you couldn't have waited until after the playoffs to make this move, to get rid of Malone, to get rid of Booth? I'm shocked. And then again, I say, like, you have probably the best player on the planet, or close to it, top 2, top 3 in Nikola Jokic. You probably should be in a much firmer position in the Western Conference, while the Thunder are very much up here, and the Rockets are still above the fray, above that 3 through 8 group that are all within 2 games of each other. Denver probably should have been above the Rockets, or right there with the Rockets, above the fray here. They should not have been in the position they're in. So it's a very weird spot to find yourself if you are a team that has one of the best, if not the best player in the league. But man, shit must have gotten really bad there for you to part with both of those guys with 3 games left in the season. And I bring all this up because the Sixers are going to have some kind of a soul searching at the end of this season. Now, we all, and I include myself in this, have to have the acknowledgement here that things have not gone well under Daryl Morey and under the Daryl Morey regime. And while Nick Nurse was brought in here, and I was just happy to have Doc Rivers out of town, I'm not exactly sure that Nick Nurse has really done a lot to inspire a ton of confidence as the head coach of this team. Now, I will tell you that I do think that they should absolutely get rid of Daryl Morey in the offseason, without a doubt. But I don't think that they should be married to the head coach either. I will simply point to what has happened in the past, even recently in this city, where the Flyers fired Chuck Fletcher and Danny Briere inherited the coach. Wasn't exactly given the opportunity to go through a whole coaching search or maybe decide if that's the guy that he really wanted to ride and die with. It has happened in other situations. It's happened in this city. It's happened elsewhere. If you're going to go out and hire a new executive, you should give them the opportunity to evaluate if they want to keep that coach or not. But Denver, man, Landros jokes here, says maybe Denver is hoping for the coaching firing bump. It worked for the Flyers. And Chris Fried says, coaches are hired to be fired, yo. But man, that is a wild situation in Denver. And again, I come back to this. If you're the Sixers, you cannot be happy with how the season went. You cannot be happy with the contract that was given out to Paul George and the fact that the return on that investment has been horrific. You cannot feel good about the fact that Joel Embiid was given a supermax extension and that it has not worked because the guy's not healthy. You can feel good about the fact that Morey did find Jared McCain. You can feel good about the acquisition of Quentin Grimes. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's enough for you as Sixers ownership to say, we're going to keep riding with Daryl Morey. It would not be enough for me. I'd say thank you for those 2 wonderful players, but at the same time, we gotta make a change here. If Denver's willing to do it, 2 years off of a championship, the Sixers had damn well at least be willing to have that conversation. Now I'm going to go back out to the comments really quick because there is something going on tonight. The Flyers take the ice for the first time in what feels like an eternity. Jamie Rollo says they dropped to the number 4 pick, but we have to lose these games in hand that we have. Start Kolosov the rest of the way. And AJ over on YouTube says, largely meaningless game tonight between the Rangers and Flyers, but I believe Sam Rosen and John J.D. Davidson are calling one last game to celebrate Sam retiring after 40 years as the Rangers' voice. Well, good on him and good on them. The Rangers the last time I took a look, let me just take a goosey gander over at the Eastern Conference standings and where the Rangers are right now. Now, they're in pretty good shape. Let's see. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. I mean, the Rangers are kind of in the muck with a lot of other teams in the Eastern Conference. So maybe it's not quite as meaningful for them as it may have otherwise been. It's still a meaningless game for the Flyers, and it's still a game that the Flyers need to lose. As we pointed out, the Flyers are in that unenviable position of having games in hand over these other teams that they're actively battling against. It's not ideal. It's not great. Just looking here really quick. Yeah, the Rangers are effectively out of the playoff hunt. They would need Montreal to lose out, and they would have to win each of their final 5 games to get to 89 points to catapult over Montreal, who currently has 87 with 78 games played. So it doesn't have nearly the meaning that we hoped it was going to have about a week or so ago. JH says, give me some sexy Alexi. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. All right, listen, that's it for today. A little bit of an odd show. We react to the Phillies game. We get the breaking news about Daniel Gazdag. I might have to bring on somebody to talk about the union on Friday to just explain the rationale behind the move. We'll see if that happens on Friday. The Sixers and the Flyers both wake up this morning in nice position in the Tankathon standings. But we'll be back on Friday here at 8:30 a.m. with the Russ Joy Show. By the way, if you're a pro wrestling fan, I did drop a new episode of It's Just Wrestling on Monday, breaking down AEW Dynasty. So you can go check that out on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. There should be a new Snow the Goalie this week, I believe. Let me think. Saturday, I believe. They're playing down at Wells Fargo Center, so that'll be a press row show as well. So a lot of stuff going on. And there's a new episode of Phightin Words for Monday. They're going to be back on Friday morning, breaking down all the Philly stuff. So anyway, head over to the Joy Media channel on YouTube, the one that has the black and white logo, not the guy from Singapore or whatever with 174,000 subscribers, not that one. Very clearly not me. Go subscribe there. Subscribe on the respective YouTube channels. Find the podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. Until Friday morning at 8:30 a.m. This has been the Russ Joy Show, and I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. Talk to each and every one of you Friday morning here on the Russ Joy Show. Have a wonderful Wednesday, everybody. Talk to you soon.